The wind blew softly through the tall purple trees of planet Eros 9. Strange birds called out in the distance, and glowing insects danced through the thick green air. It was quiet, peaceful, but also dangerous. Jake Thorne, a human scout, sat near a small campfire. His gray survival suit was dirty, scratched from the crash and weeks of walking. His face was tired, his beard rough, and his stomach empty. Jake had been alone on the planet for 12 days. His shuttle crashed during a storm. The main ship was gone, and there was no signal. He had food rations, water tablets, a knife, and a small emergency tent. That was all. He hunted small animals and drank from filtered leaves. It wasn't easy, but he survived. He checked his backpack and frowned. The food packets were missing. Jake looked around. "No way I ate them," he muttered. He never made mistakes like that. He checked for signs. There were no broken containers, no crumbs, no trash. The packets were just gone. Could be animals, he said, but deep down, he wasn't sure. That night, Jake stayed awake. He placed his pack inside his tent and kept the fire low. He listened carefully to the sounds around him. Hours passed, then a soft noise. Leaves moved. Something was out there. Jake slowly picked up his knife and crept out of the tent. His eyes scanned the dark trees. Nothing. He was about to go back when he saw its glowing yellow eyes staring at him from the trees. They blinked once, then vanished. Jake ran after them, but whatever it was had already disappeared. The next morning, Jake found tracks near the camp. Small, light, but to perfect not an animal. The feet looked almost human, but had claw-like ends. Whatever it was had toes. Jake knelt and touched the marks. Someone or something is watching me. That afternoon, Jake decided to make a trap. Nothing too strong. Just a tripwire made of vine and a noise alarm using a tin cup and pebbles. He didn't want to hurt anyone. He just wanted answers. Night came again. The wind blew harder now, and the farce was louder than before. Jake sat by the fire, eating dry meat. His knife was on his lap. His eyes didn't close for a second. Then clink, the trap was triggered. Jake jumped up and ran to the noise. The cup had fallen. The vine had caught something. It was moving fast. He shined his flashlight and stopped. In front of him was a creature. No, a girl. An alien girl. She had fur, soft and gray. Her eyes were glowing yellow, wide with fear. Her ears were pointed like a cat's, and she had a tail that twitched behind her. She hissed and tried to break free. Jake stepped back. He raised his hands. "I won't hurt you." The alien girl paused. She sniffed the air like an animal. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't speak, but she didn't attack. Jake slowly cut the vine trap with his knife. The girl jumped away, landing like a cat on all fours. She stared at him again, then ran into the trees. Jake didn't chase her this time. He stood there, shocked. A cat girl. The next day was quiet. Jake stayed close to camp. He didn't see her again, but when he opened his pack that night, something was inside. Not stolen food, but a gift, a fresh piece of alien meat, wrapped in large leaves, cleanly cut, not torn. It smelled like wild herbs. Jake looked around the trees. He smiled. She came back. The sun on Eros 9 rose with a soft blue light. Strange flying creatures chirped in the trees, and colorful flowers opened slowly. Jake sat near his fire, staring at the leaf-wrapped meat. It was fresh, clean, safe to eat. The cat girl had left. It wasn't a mistake. It was a gift. He cooked the meat carefully. It smelled better than anything he had eaten in days. As he took small bites, he looked around the trees. "Are you watching me again?" he whispered. He didn't know why, but Jake felt calm. This creature, whoever she was, could have hurt him. She didn't. She had stolen his food, but now she brought her own. It was strange, but it felt like a message. That evening, Jake left a piece of dried fruit near the edge of his camp. He didn't stay close. He just watched from his tent, hiding behind the flap. For hours, nothing moved. Then soft steps. She came again. The cat girl walked slowly onto legs. She crouched near the fruit, sniffed it, and picked it up. She didn't run this time. Jake stepped out quietly. She saw him and froze. Her tail moved behind her, and her ears flicked. He raised his hand slowly. "It's okay," he said gently. "I just want to talk." She tilted her head. She didn't understand the words, but she understood his tone. Jake pointed to himself. "Jake." He said it again, slower. "Jake." She blinked. Then she pointed to herself. "Sira." Jake smiled. "Sira, that's your name?" She didn't answer, but her ears moved forward. It seemed like a yes. They stood there for a long moment, just watching each other. Then Sira pointed at the forest. Then to Jake. She made a slicing motion with her clawed hand, then pointed to the ground. He didn't understand. She did it again. Then she mimed holding a stick, then tossing it. Her movements were sharp, fast like hunting. Jake's eyes widened. "You want me to come with you? To hunt?" She nodded once. Jake looked at his gear. Then he looked at her. He smiled. "Okay, Sira. Let's hunt." Sira moved like a shadow through the forest. Her fur blended with the trees. Her ears twitched at every sound, and her eyes glowed. Even in the dark places, Jake followed behind her, careful not to make too much noise. He was slower, but trained. He knew how to walk without stepping on dry branches or loud leaves. Sira stopped and crouched. She pointed to a group of thick bushes. Behind them, a creature moved. It was like a mix of a rabbit and a lizard quick. With green scales and long legs, Sira pointed to herself, then Jake. She made a circling motion. Jake understood. She would scare it toward him. He nodded. Sira moved left, fast and silent. Jake ready to sharpen stick and waited. The creature jumped out, running right at him. Jake threw the spear. Thud. The creature fell, rolling on the ground. Jake ran up to it. It was dead. A clean hit. Sira appeared beside him, breathing fast but smiling. Her eyes were bright. Jake smiled back. "We did it." Sira made a strange sound, a short, soft laugh. Together, they carried the animal back to Jake's camp. That night, they sat near the fire. Sira showed Jake how to clean the meat using sharp stones and strong leaves. She used herbs from her patch ones that smelled sweet and spicy. The meat cooked faster and tasted better. Jake gave her a full water bottle. She sniffed it, then drank. She seemed surprised by the clean taste. They sat in silence, watching them. Fire. Jake took a stick and drew a circle in the dirt. He added stars. Then he pointed to the sky. Sira watched carefully. She touched the drawing, then added her own. Her version showed a different shape like a sun with claws. They both looked at each other. They didn't speak the same language, but they were learning to understand. Then a rustle in the trees. Sira stood up fast. Her ears turned, her tail straightened. Jake picked up his knife, but nothing came. Just the wind. Still, Sira stayed tense. She looked into the woods with sharp eyes. She pointed at the trees, then made a low growl sound. "Danger." Jake nodded. "We're not alone out here." Sira didn't stay long after that. She picked up her bag and walked toward the forest. But before she left, she looked back. Jake raised a hand. "Good night, Sira." She made a soft sound and disappeared into the dark. Jake sat back and looked at the stars. He wasn't alone anymore. Early morning mist floated through the tall alien trees as the blue sun rose. Jake woke up to the smell of warm herbs and cooking meat. He blinked and looked outside his tent. Sira was already there. She crouched by the fire, roasting part of yesterday's catch. Her tail moved slowly, side to side. She didn't speak, but she gave Jake a quick glance, then turned back to the meat. Jake stepped out. "Morning." Sira nodded once. She handed him a leaf with cooked slices. It was delicious. Jake smiled and gave her a thumbs up. "Good." Sira copied the thumbs up, not fully understanding, but she liked the sound of his voice. After eating, Sira pointed to the trees again. She made the hunting motion sharp and fast. Jake knew what that meant. Time to hunt again. This time, they went deeper into the forest. The trees grew closer, the light dimmer. Strange plant vines hung from the branches, and colorful bugs flew in swarms. Sira moved like a wild spirit, fast, quiet, focused. She sniffed the air, watched the ground, and listened to every sound. Jake tried his best to follow. He stepped carefully, Watching where she stepped and copying her movements, she stopped suddenly and held up her hand. Jake froze. In the distance, they saw it, a large four-legged beast drinking from a pool. It had thick fur and long tusks. Its back was covered with bone-like armor plates. Jake whispered, "We can't take that down alone." Sarah looked at him. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a strange spear. It had a sharp crystal tip and a flexible shaft. She pointed to herself, then to the beast. Jake shook his head. "Too dangerous." But Sarah only smiled. She moved fast round the bushes, staying low. Jake's side. Crazy cat. He circled the other side and picked up a rock. He threw it near the water. It landed with a splash. The beast turned its head. Sarah attacked. She ran at full speed, leaped into the air, and stabbed the spear deep into the beast's neck. It roared, shaking its head and stomping wildly. Jake ran forward, yelling to distract. The beast turned toward Jake, blood spilling from its wound. Jake jumped behind a tree as the beast charged, but it stumbled halfway, losing strength. Sarah jumped again, this time slashing at its leg. The beast fell, crashing to the ground with a heavy thud. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then Sarah stood up, breathing hard, for covered in sweat and dirt. Jake came closer. "You okay?" Sarah gave a small nod. She touched a small cut on her arm but didn't seem worried. They both stared at the fallen beast. It was the biggest thing they had taken down so far. Jake smiled. "That was insane, but amazing." Sarah made a soft purring sound. She seemed proud. They didn't carry the whole beast. It was too big. They cut parts of the meat and wrapped them in leaves. Sarah showed Jake which bones could be used for tools or weapons. Back at camp, they hung the meat to dry and smoked some over the fire. Jake sat down, tired but happy. "You know," he said, "I've never worked this well with anyone, not even humans." Sarah didn't understand the words, but she watched his face, sensing his meaning. Later that night, Jake showed her more star drawings. He pointed at a group of stars and said, "Earth." Then he pointed to the sky again. "Home." Sarah looked up, then pointed to a different group. She drew a claw-shaped symbol and tapped her chest. "Home." Jake repeated, nodding. Then Sarah made a sad sound. Her ears dropped slightly. Jake noticed. "You miss it?" Sarah didn't answer, but she stared at the fire for a long time. Then a loud sound in the sky. Both stood quickly. A distant hum, like engines. They ran to the edge of the clearing. In the sky, small dark ships flew above the forest. They moved slowly, scanning with bright lights. Jake's face went pale. "That's not good," Sarah growled. Her tail twitched with fear. Jake looked at her. "You know those ships?" She nodded slowly. Her claws were out. She pointed to the trees, then made a motion like a weapon firing. "They're dangerous." Jake understood. They were not alone on the planet anymore, and whoever just arrived was not friendly. That night, the two didn't sleep. They sat in silence, watching the sky. Jake checked his old emergency beacon. It was still off. It couldn't be his signal the ships were following. Then who were they looking for? Sarah touched his arm. She pointed to herself, then to the ships, then back to Jake. "They're looking for me." Her eyes seemed to say. Jake didn't ask questions. He just nodded. They were a team now. Whatever danger was coming, they'd face it together. The night was dark and heavy on Eros 9. The forest whispered with strange sounds. But Jake and Sarah sat silently in the small clearing. The blue moon was low in the sky, and far above, the stars hid behind thick clouds. Jake's heart pounded as he looked toward the sky. The dark ships were still there. They floated slowly, shining bright searchlights into the trees below. The ships made a low humming noise that filled the air like a threat. Sarah's yellow eyes glowed in the firelight. She did not say a word, but Jake could feel her fear. "They're coming for you," Jake whispered. Sarah nodded once and showed him sharp claws on her hands. She made a slicing motion and then pointed toward the forest deeper inside. "They want to fight," Jake said slowly, "or they want to capture you." Sarah growled softly and touched a small scar on her shoulder. Jake looked closely. It was old but deep. "They've done this before," he said. "They hurt you?" Sarah's ears flattened. Jake reached into his pack and pulled out a small metal device's emergency beacon. It was still quiet. He didn't want it to send a signal now. It could bring more trouble. "We can't call for help," he said. "Not yet." Sarah stepped closer and brushed her tail against his leg. She looked at him with fierce trust. Jake smiled weakly. "We fight, or we hide." Sarah pointed to the forest again. She made a motion like a hunter tracking prey slow. "Careful." Jake understood. "We track them first." The next day was tense. Jake and Sarah moved through the dense forest like shadows. Sarah led the way, her sharp eyes scanning the trees. Jake followed quietly, ready for anything. They found signs, broken branches, strange footprints with heavy metal prints inside. The enemy soldiers had passed this way. "They use machines," Jake said. "Big machines. They're soldiers." Sarah growled low. Suddenly, Jake heard a noise, a soft beep coming from a small drone hovering above. He raised his knife and threw it. The knife hit the drone's body, and it crashed into the bushes with a loud crack. Sarah smiled fiercely. "Good," she said in her broken words. They took the drone apart, learning its shape and size. "We can fight this," Jake said, "if we work together." That evening, the humming ships returned. But this time, they landed several small vehicles near the forest edge. Soldiers in dark armor stepped out. They wore heavy helmets that hid their faces. They spoke in low voices, using strange words Jake didn't understand. Sarah's tail lashed behind her. She growled low in her throat. Jake raised his hand, showing peace. "We don't want trouble," he said, "but we will fight if we must." The soldiers laughed, a cold, harsh sound. One stepped forward and pointed a strange weapon at Jake. Jake and Sarah exchanged a quick glance. Sarah's eyes flashed yellow. She moved first. With speed and grace, she jumped toward the soldier. Her claws flashed like lightning, slashing his armor. The soldier screamed and stumbled backward. Another soldier fired a weapon. Jake dove behind a tree. The shot missed him by inches. They were under attack. Jake and Sarah ran through the forest, dodging gunfire and falling branches. Sarah used her speed and knowledge of the forest to confuse the soldiers. She led Jake through hidden paths and low tunnels beneath giant roots. The soldiers shouted and cursed. Their machines crashed into trees. One vehicle flipped over. Jake saw Sarah jump high and catch a rope hanging from a branch. She swung like a wildcat and kicked a soldier into a tree. Jake laughed despite the danger. "You're amazing." Sarah smiled, but her eyes were serious. They slowed down only when the forest was quiet again. Jake checked his knife. It had a few scratches, but it was fine. Sarah touched her arm. It had a new cut. "We need to rest," Jake said. Sarah nodded. They hid in a deep cave. Inside, the air was cool and damp. Jake tore a cloth and wrapped Sarah's wound carefully. "You're brave," Jake said. Sarah looked at him and made a small, soft sound. It was almost like a thank you. That night, Jake thought about his mission and his lost ship. He looked at Sarah and knew they needed each other to survive. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small data pad. He turned it on. On the screen was a message from his captain. "Mission failed. No help coming. Survive and wait for rescue." Jake sighed. He turned to Sarah. "We may not get rescue soon, but we can fight together." Sarah blinked and touched his hand. The forest outside was quiet now, but Jake and Sarah knew the danger was not gone. They were ready. The forest was quiet but tense. Jake and Sarah moved carefully through the thick trees. The sounds of the alien war patrol were closer now. The soldiers were searching for them. Jake looked at the small device in his hand, the emergency beacon. He knew it was the only way to call for rescue. But if he turned it on now, the patrol would find them faster. He shook his head. "No," he whispered. "I can't risk it." Sarah watched him with her glowing yellow eyes. She understood. Instead of calling for help, they would have to fight or run. "We fight," Jake said. He felt the weight of the knife in his hand. "Or we make a trap." Sarah's tail twitched. She looked eager and ready. Together, they began to plan. Sarah showed Jake the safest path to the deep hunting grounds. a place full of strange, dangerous beasts. She knew these animals well. The soldiers did not, if we lure them there. She said with broken words, beasts will help. Jake nodded slowly. It was risky, but it might be their only chance. They set up traps, using vines, sharp sticks, and stones. They created snare lines and pitfalls. Jake used his knowledge of technology and nature. Sarah used her speed and sharp claws to tie knots and check every trap dot it took all day. When the sun set, they waited, hiding behind thick bushes. Soon, the patrol arrived. The soldiers walked confidently. They carried heavy weapons and moved in groups. They talked, quietly but harshly. They scanned the forest with bright lights and sensors. Jake's heart raced. Sarah growled low in her throat. The soldiers stepped into the trap zone. Suddenly, vines snapped, pulling one soldier off his feet. He screamed. A pit opened, and another soldier fell into it. The beasts writhed from the trees, strange creatures large, wild, with sharp teeth and glowing eyes leapt onto the patrol. The soldiers fired guns, but the animals were fast. Chaos exploded. Jake and Sarah moved quickly. Sarah used her claws and speed to attack the soldiers. Jake threw rocks and shouted to distract. One soldier raised a gun toward Jake. Sarah jumped between them and scratched the soldier's arm. The soldier fired, but the shot missed Jake by inches. Jake ducked behind a tree and pulled out a flare. He lit it and threw it toward the beasts. The bright red light confused the animals. Some backed away. The soldiers saw their chance and started to retreat. Jake and Sarah didn't chase them. They knew the fight was won for now, but the patrol would return. Sarah's arm was bleeding. Jake tore his shirt and wrapped her wound carefully. "You're hurt," Jake said. She nodded, but her eyes were fierce. "We survived," she said simply. Jake smiled. Together, after the battle, Jake destroyed his emergency beacon. "It's too dangerous," he said. "They are tracking this signal." Sarah watched quietly. Jake looked at the stars. "We may not get rescue soon," he said, "but we have each other." Sarah smiled and touched his hand. Jake felt a warmth he had not known since his crash. For the first time on Eros 9, he felt hope. Days passed. The forest of Eros 9 grew quiet again. The enemy patrol had not returned. The beasts that helped Jake and Sarah now kept the area safe. Jake sat by the fire, sharpening a spear. Sarah sat beside him, her wounded arm healing. She was still strong, still watching the trees, but her eyes seemed softer now. They had hunted every day. They had built a better shelter with branches, rocks, and animal skins. They had become a team more than that, almost like family. Jake looked up at the stars. "I wonder if anyone out there is still looking for me." Sarah tilted her head. "Raise Q?" she asked, learning the word slowly. Jake nodded. Maybe not." He smiled at her. "I'm not alone anymore. That's what matters." Sarah's ears twitched. She looked toward the sky. Something was coming. A soft hum filled the air. Jake stood up fast. "That sound, it's not the patrol." He grabbed his small scanner and turned it on. A blinking light appeared. Sarah stood beside him. "What is it?" Jake smiled wide. "It's a human rescue ship, a real one." They ran toward the open hill nearby. The place where the sky was clear. In the distance, a silver ship dropped through the clouds. It was larger than the patrol ships, brighter, cleaner. The engines glowed blue. The ship hovered, then gently landed on the ground. Jake waved both arms high. A door opened. Human soldiers stepped out in clean white armor. One of them raised a hand. "Jake Thorne." Jake ran forward. "Yes, that's me." They looked shocked. "We thought you were dead. How are you still alive?" Jake turned and pointed. "I had help." Sarah stepped forward slowly. The humans stared. She looked different from any species they had seen. Her cat-like ears twitched. Her long tail moved behind her. But she held her head high, not afraid. One soldier stepped back. "What is that?" Jake stood beside her. "Her name is Sarah. She saved my life. We hunted together. We fought patrols together. I would not be here without her." The soldiers looked at each other. "She's not on any known list," one said. "We don't know if she's dangerous." "She's not," Jake said firmly. She's a survivor, just like me. The ship captain came out. He was older, with gray hair and wise eyes. He walked to Sierra and looked at her carefully. Sierra stood still. The captain nodded slowly. She's brave. Jake smiled. Yes, she is. The captain looked at Sierra and spoke gently. You saved one of my crew. That makes you an ally. Sierra didn't understand all the words, but she saw Jake's smile and the calm voice of a man. She gave a short bow. Can't she come with us? Jake asked. The captain raised an eyebrow. You trust her that much? With my life. The captain thought for a moment. Then he nodded. Very well. But she'll need to be scanned and cleared. Standard safety rules. Sierra looked at Jake. Jake nodded. It's okay. They just want to be sure. She stepped forward slowly and entered the ship. Inside, the ship was bright and clean. The walls hummed softly. The humans stared at Sierra but kept their distance. Jake and Sierra were given food, water, and warm beds. A doctor checked Sierra's wound. She growled a little at first but allowed the scan. The wound was healing well. She's tough, the doctor said, but healthy. Later, Jake showed Sierra the screen in the rest area. It showed Earth, spinning blue and white, my home. He said. Sierra touched the screen. Pretty. Jake looked at her. You don't have to stay on your planet anymore. You can come with us. There's so much to see out there. Sierra looked thoughtful. She stared at the stars outside the window. Then she nodded slowly. Together, Jake smiled. Yeah, together. As the ship lifted off, Eros 9 became smaller below them, the forest, the camp, the danger all behind them now. Sierra sat beside Jake, watching the stars fly past. She had once been alone, hiding in the trees, stealing food to survive. Now, she had a friend, a hunter, a partner, and maybe a new home.